Well, after a disastrous spring game, Mississippi State went hard after several offensive linemen, and they were able to land some more. Let's break it down. Coming up next.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Jaron Spor, National College Football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon. We're here to talk to you about several exciting things happening with Mississippi State football. Yesterday was a busy day, especially with baseball firing. This episode, we're dedicated to football. We got to get into it. But Landon, what's happening? They're getting so many offensive linemen that had to happen.
I joked about how Phil Oldholt has a type, and that type is him, but he keeps bringing in those guys. I mean,
yeah,
Zack Owens, 6'6", 345.
Yeah.
I don't know if these guys got the technique, but we got enough people where these defensive linemen have to run a mile to get around them. So
yeah. No, I mean, he's massive, and he's a guy that started his career. I think he was a 4-star prospect, started his career at Clemson, went to Colorado, was with Loadhold at Colorado, but as a redshirt freshman, mainly did special teams. So we'll see what he can still develop into. But he was young, a redshirt freshman. So we'll see what happens there. Jayvin James from Maryland, I believe he was at Akron before that, transferred to Maryland, I believe in the winter portal. He transferred to Maryland, so he never actually played a game with Maryland. He started for Akron though, so he's played, starter minutes at the D1 level, but he's a guy that I feel like he's going to be a work in progress. So he's listed at 6'4", 310 pounds over on 24/7, but I saw something the other day that said he's actually probably 6'3", 285. That's the case. You got to get bigger. He's got to put on about 30 pounds if that's the case.
Or he drops 15 pounds and becomes a new tight end.
Right. Yeah. He's a guy that, I will say this though. He likely didn't have the strength and conditioning program at Akron that he's going to have at Mississippi State. So it's very possible he can put that weight on before the season, but I expect he's probably not going to make an impact this year if I had to guess. But regardless, it's more depth because he has starter experience. So I love what they're doing. Loadhold is cooking right now.
Yeah, more bodies in is good with what we saw. I mean, if you don't know if these guys are good, just give yourself a million options to figure out a combination that works. And we've talked about how big all these guys are. They have guys who, like in Owens' case, highly recruited but hasn't played much, or guys who have just played a ton. So it's a nice mix of guys that like potential with kind of what they have. This is what this player is. Maybe James is just a depth piece. You don't want him starting, but he can be a solid, a third tackle and come in, spell someone for a little while if you have to. And that's incredibly valuable over the course of a football season.
Yeah, and I'm looking through all the transfers they've added. They've had 7 players on the offensive line. And that's not including Jesse Ramil, who they added and then obviously lost. 7 players on the offensive line is how many they've added since the winter portal. So it's winter and the spring portal. So that's a lot. And, 5, they've added 5 the last, not even a week, 5 in the last, 5 days or whatever it's been. And they could be adding another one, but I don't want to spoil that because we're going to talk about that in the next segment because we got to talk about more about what they're going to be looking at in the portal. Then we obviously have some recruiting news at the end to talk about. But I mean, again, I said it on Monday. They saw the issue all spring. They saw it even more prevalent in the spring game, and they said we have to get better on the offensive line, or this season's not going to be better than 2-10 like it was.
Yeah, when Lebby said they were looking at offensive line help, I didn't know he meant an entire new offensive line.
Right. That's basically what he's done. And it's starting experience. So if these guys aren't going to start for you, they're at least backups for you.
Yeah, and the guys who don't have starting experience are like Owens, who was, I think he was like 32nd ranked tackle in his recruiting class, who has been in college programs for 2 years. I mean, if he doesn't start, it's a guy who you would expect to be able to start now, pretty much. So, and they even have a guy with center starting experience, and then they got guys who have started at tackle, guys who have started at guard, and
guys who started at tackle that are playing center.
It's all over the place to where they really can mix and match and try to find their best five, because they have so many of these pieces have played either guard and tackle or guard and center and tackle or both tackles. So you can really match and try to find something that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's just incredible what they've done. Because, you lose Carson Lee, who entered the portal, and then right after he enters the portal, you get Brennan Smith on board, who we talked about on Monday, and then you add Jayvin James, and then obviously, like we just mentioned, you add Zacharias Owens. So, I mean, it's just, I almost said Zachariah Smith, but Zachariah Owens. You lost some people in the portal, Ramil and Carson Lee, but it seemed like they had a plan for it. Like maybe it was a mutual parting of the ways. I don't know. Maybe it was unexpected, but you can tell they went into the portal with a plan, and they have executed that plan.
Oh, yeah, they have. And with guys of this size, something you typically don't see is those guys don't get bullied. They might not be the most technically sound. They might not be the person with the quickest feet, but they're typically not the ones getting bullied on a football field. And maybe that's what they're going after. We've talked about that, creating an identity, being a tough out when you face these teams that have just the incredible depth of talent. Maybe they're like, we're just going to get a bunch of guys who are going to punch you in the face for 4 quarters to protect our quarterback and open up some running holes.
Right. And I don't want to spoil it because we're going to talk about it next segment, but the other guy that they might get, he might be the biggest fish of them all in terms of being the best player. He's also a big dude also, but he's a guy that if you get him on board, you're looking at worst an average offensive line, I feel like.
And that's huge. And
because at one point you were looking at a bottom tier offensive line. You might be average just like that.
And this 5 days, 2 weeks, however we want to frame them pulling in these players, it shows how quickly you can overhaul a unit with the transfer portal. I mean, they did it with their receivers in the last portal, and now they're doing it with the offensive line here. And if they hit on 2 of these guys, I mean, obviously you want to hit on all of them, have a great offensive line, but if you hit on 2 of them, then all of a sudden your offensive line becomes average. And if those other guys just start to get a little bit better as the season goes on, end of the year, you have something to work with. Most of these guys have at least 1 more year of eligibility left too.
Yeah, you're right on the money with that. And I will say this, while these guys on paper are guys that have started, that have played good football, the offensive line is one of those weird positions that you really chemistry means so much. And so that's one thing that is stunk about them coming now is they're not going to have that chemistry together. They haven't played a whole, spring football together. So we did talk about, though, that you can build that chemistry just by hanging out, just by doing stuff, get together. And so hopefully they're doing stuff like that. They can also do some work just together. But that's the one thing that I'm like, okay, if it doesn't work out, that could be why it didn't work out.
The NIL needs to get on it, get like a 8-bedroom O-lineman house. Just get them in there 24 hours a day together, build that chemistry. But
what was it a few years ago? The Browns had that QB RV or whatever. Yeah. They need something like that.
Oh, we need a big RV for all these guys.
And bring Hard Knocks. We'll get some videos of that.
Yeah, I mean, if they can build chemistry, this is really shaping up to be a line you're not scared to roll out there. Right. Until you see an offensive lineman play, it's hard to believe in them and that it's going to work, especially with how bad it was just a few weeks ago at the spring game. So hopefully they do get in there. They start to improve. Load Holt got his guys. So hopefully he saw on tape exactly what he is going to see from them on the field in the fall. So it's, once again, we have hope, and hope is not a strategy, but it's all we have right now.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up the point that these are guys that have multiple years for the most part that he's brought in. And that's big because you can develop these guys. And if the chemistry doesn't work out this year, playing this year will build that chemistry for the following year, and you're ready to roll. And
Or
so,
you get 8 new guys.
right, yeah, or you just overhaul the whole offensive line again, But no, I think that is a very good point. That these are guys that have multiple years.
Yeah, and like I said, it's exciting for what it is now because we haven't seen them play bad yet, and hopefully we don't see them play bad. But yeah, I mean, we talked about it for a long time how they needed it. Now they have the bodies in, and now it's did they nail the evaluations, and will they be coached up enough over the next few months?
Right. All right, well, coming up next, what's next in the portal? That includes a visit that apparently went pretty well with another offensive lineman. We'll talk about that. That's coming up next. Will you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. I know I'm going to need this. I'm going to need to put my fiance on this because just the other day I was at work and I kept getting alerts that someone was at my door, and I kept looking. It was Amazon. It was FedEx. It was UPS delivering all these packages. She's going a little crazy right now as we get ready for the wedding. So that is something that I need to get us on definitely, because managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, so the visits aren't done yet. So TJ Ferguson, we retweeted this. He visited, I believe it was over the weekend. He was a guard from Florida State, started his career at Alabama, played in 12 games, started one at Alabama, made his first career start there, and appeared in 6 games for the Tide, the SEC Championship Tide in 2023. And then in 2024, he played in 11 games with 7 starts on the offensive line at Florida State. Obviously, Florida State didn't have a great offense, and so people might see that and be like, I don't know. But 6'4", 330-pound guard, played a lot of football. He's a redshirt junior, another guy with a ton of experience. So he's visited. Let's start there, and before we get into what else we kind of expect, because I don't think the visits are going to be done anytime soon. I think they're going to still get some visits in. We talked about it Monday, how people can still do visits even though the portal closed on Friday. As long as your name was in, you're in, and you can go on visits. But Ferguson, I mean, how big of a pool would that be?
That'd be huge. I mean, that's a guy who you know where he can play. You're putting him in one of the 2 guard spots, and
that's your starting guard.
And you're feeling good about it.
Yeah.
You get him, and you're like, all right, we got to figure out 4 more spots. And maybe they already know who one of the other 4 starters are. We don't know.
Right.
But maybe you get him. It's like, all right, we need 3 more. And, I mean, he's a guy you just start and you feel good about it. He's got the experience. He's got the size. He's played it. He's played in the SEC. He played at Florida State. He's played big-time football. He's played everywhere. And it's just that'd be fun.
6'4", 330. Another just massive dude.
Yeah, is there no one bigger? Like, what is this?
Look at load haul. Like, literally, when we made that joke the first time, where we was like, he's just getting guys like him. We were just joking.
I did not have inside knowledge that's
since then he's just rattling off big dudes, and that's what you need to build an SEC line. Like, we've talked about it every time, and so that would obviously be a massive get. That's one of those that, like, we've talked about the other ones where, like, you think he's going to start, you think he'd play this spot, but you're not sure. That's when, like, he's a starter. You know going in that he's a starter, and he'll solidify one of those guard spots. Mayberry probably will solidify the other spot. And so you're good at guard. And so hopefully you have some rushing success. yeah, Booth is probably loving these signings
Yeah.
right now. He's ready to get running. But what else will they be doing? So another thing that On3 talked about this. I'm not going to give all their details away because it's a paid side. So go subscribe to them, check out their work. They do a great job. But they said that they're looking to add a cornerback and a pass rusher on the defensive line, and that they expect Mississippi State to keep hosting transfer official visits this week. And once those visits are set, they're going to start listing some of those. But again, I'm not going to go into detail who those are. You have to go subscribe and find out who those guys are. But it seems like, again, they've kind of solidified the line. It seems like Ferguson is either they get Ferguson and they're done, or they're just done if he doesn't come.
Yeah.
They're happy where they're at. I don't think they add an offensive lineman just to add one at this point. I think it has to be Ferguson.
It has to be the right one.
Right. And then I think there's several cornerback options out there, and there's several pass rushers. You're not going to get any elite pass rushers at this point, but you can add maybe some depth to the room.
Yeah, and you always need more pass rushers. I mean, you hear that.
Right.
I mean, how many times did we hear that watching the NFL draft this past weekend? I mean, it was every 5 minutes. You can't have enough pass rushers. You can't have enough pass rushers.
All right.
Bringing more guys in. And it's not like this team is loaded with, pass rushers who did a lot last year. So more dice rolls you have at that position is good. Corner depth, secondary depth is always something you need, because that's another one where like communication is huge. If someone isn't communicating well, isn't understanding their like rotations right, it doesn't matter how talented they are. You pretty much have to get them off the field. And sometimes you just don't hit the right fit with those types of positions. So you got to get more bodies in the room.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say cornerback is kind of a difficult one to evaluate, because if the guy came from a program and was a starter, he's probably going to make a lot of money in the transfer portal. And you don't really want to overpay for a cornerback, in my opinion. Just kind of set what your evaluation is, and you kind of go from there. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I do want to also mention, we mentioned Devon Mitchell several weeks ago as a tight end candidate. I haven't really heard Mississippi State being interested in that one. Louisville is expected to get a visit from him. So we'll see what ends up happening there, but I wouldn't expect that name to happen. But yeah, cornerback, it's just it's a weird deal. Like I said, it's one of those that the starters are just going for a crazy amount of money right now. And, you could add one for depth, but if he's leaving because he's not starting, is he going to come to you to not start? That's just the weird thing.
And if you have someone who they come from a team that plays a lot of zone, it can be hard to evaluate, because he might look good and make plays, but his safety looks bad because he's blowing coverages all day, and his safety's having to clean up his mess. And you don't really understand that, because you don't know what the defense was.
Yeah.
You don't understand that the guy who ran wide open was actually his responsibility. So
nothing drives me crazier than when I hear someone gripe about whatever DB because they're the closest to it. Oh, you got burnt. And it's like, well, no, actually, he was supposed to be over here.
He's the only one that paid attention.
Yeah, cornerback was supposed to guard him. The corner got burnt, and so he ran to try to save the corner.
Yep.
And it looks like he got burnt when really he made the right play. I hate that. It drives me crazy, and that's just a bunch of, and we all do it. I don't want to act like I don't do it either in terms of
it's very hard on TV copy.
We armchair quarterback a lot of stuff. Yeah, we all armchair quarterback a lot of stuff, but it does drive me crazy when I see people say that, because it's like, usually you can tell after the play. Like I argued with a friend one time because I was watching a play and he was yelling at the defender that was closest to it, and I said, they all, including the coaches, looked at the corner and started yelling at the corner. I think the corner was in the wrong. And he tried to swear, no, it was the safety. I'm like, everyone looked at the corner. The corner was wrong.
It's usually the corner. And when you don't have the TV copy, it's easier because you can see like the panic happen for the safety, and they just start sprinting across the field. You're like, he's not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening. I think they're set at tight end with Max Reese and Sam West, who they got. I think they're set at offensive line unless Ferguson wants to jump on board. Yeah, and then we'll see what they
they're going to need a big ship if he's jumping on board.
Right. They definitely need cornerback, and they definitely need pass rusher, so we'll see what they end up doing there. But All right, well, coming up next, we have some recruiting news to talk about, so don't go anywhere. Okay, so let's get in some recruiting news. John Garcia, who's the national writer for Rivals, he put out his list of 3 predictions that he's putting out, and one of them was for Mississippi State, and it was that they will land Maurice Jones Jr. He's listed at 6'2", 229 pounds. He's an edge rusher in the 2026 class. Garcia writes, a productive and emerging recruit from the Orlando area, Maurice Jones Jr. is still on the rise as a recruit, yet Mississippi State has done the best job prioritizing him before his profile becomes more national. He said it's already resulted in one visit, which was in late March, where Jones was taken aback by his first impression of Starkville and the SEC pitch the defensive staff has him centered on. An official visit is also scheduled in June for the emerging favorites. So, yeah, what was your kind of thoughts early on Maurice Jones Jr.?
Well, my first thought was to see if he was related to Maurice Jones Drew.
Right, right.
But no, he's one of those exciting players. Like, he's kind of that. Probably in high school, he plays more of that tweener, like kind of stand-up linebacker, edge rusher kind of thing. But you figure once he gets into college and gets into a weight program and grows a little bit more, he's going to be just like a true edge rusher.
Right.
And he seems to be very explosive for his size. So if he can keep that explosiveness as he packs on more muscle, gets a little bit bigger, that could be a very fun piece in a couple of years.
Yeah, he's a guy, and it mentioned it in the article that he's kind of he was laid on a lot of people's boards, and he's kind of been a slow riser, but he's someone that is emerging big time right now. And like you mentioned, he's kind of a tweener, depending on where you looked at. One says 229, one says 210, so it just kind of depends where you're looking at. But if he is 229, I think he's a guy that can develop into that kind of 3-4 pass rusher, linebacker, pass rusher. And we'll see what if he ends up committing to Mississippi State. They don't list in the article, they don't really list some of the teams that are after him outside of Mississippi State. And I searched him on On3 as well, and usually On3 has like a predictor for him, and he doesn't even have a profile set up. So that tells you how late of a riser he is. He doesn't have an On3 profile set up.
I would say on 24/7 they do have some other colleges listed as getting an offer, and that's Appalachian State, Central Michigan, Florida Atlantic. So you're not fighting the big boys yet for him.
Right.
The only people that are in on him are like the little bit smaller schools.
Well, in Florida, the home state school.
Right.
So,
but once Mississippi State's in, once other SEC schools see that offer, then he's on everybody's radar.
Yeah.
And so then you'd have to start fighting people off. But hopefully you get in on him early, get him in for a visit, make a good impression, and then you just ride it.
Well, and that's what happened. They got in on him early. They got him in for a visit in March. He loved it, and then they're going to try to get him in on a visit in June, and hopefully in June you close the deal at that point. But we'll see what ends up happening. Another thing that could go a long way: have a good football season.
Yeah, that does help. And I did just watch a couple plays of his, and he's a big guy. He's very rangy for what he said, covers a lot of ground. So yeah, I don't know if
he's got a frame that can put on some weight.
He's not a guy that's going to come in next year and make you expect him to come in as a freshman and make an impact. Maybe like his red shirt freshman year, red shirt sophomore year, you see him in some packages. Hey, you got to get those developmental guys in there to keep building them and build a program.
Yeah, no, you definitely need those kind of guys, and a lot of really good college football programs have those guys and have to develop those guys. Not everyone comes in guns a-blazing and are ready to go the first year. And so you need those guys to kind of develop and become, great players. And he's got the potential. He's got the build to put on a lot of weight. Like I said, he's a late riser, but he is rising right now. So we'll see what ends up happening with him and Mississippi State. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football, a lot of college basketball, even some NBA right now if you're interested in that. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're posting daily videos Monday through Friday, so check that out. Also, we put a comment every day on these videos with a question. Answer that. We love the feedback. We love interacting with you guys. We also have been putting polls up.
Yes.
So respond to those because, again, we love the feedback. And if you want us to talk about something, we love ideas on topics as well.
We'll take suggestions.
Yeah, we love that kind of stuff. So definitely let us know. And until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.